That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, my dudes, we are going to do something I have not seen anybody else do, but I think it's incredibly important to go through and in your fantasy draft, in trades, whatever we're talking about, understanding what we are trying to find is 2021 fantasy football playoff production, because we know those players every year. It was Jonathan Taylor last year, where yeah, maybe at the beginning of the season, they start a little slow, but when we get to the playoffs, it's time to put up or shut up. We know that's when production is most important. So we're going to go through and talk about some running backs that I think their roles are going to be perfect for the fantasy football playoffs, and their schedules are fantastic as well. Now, of course, y'all know we're going to be making videos every single day, live streaming every day on this channel, and I'll continue to update our fantasy football trade list for the fantasy football playoffs throughout the entire season. So just make sure you're subscribed to the channel, because we're going to be talking waiver wire. We're going to be talking start sit. We're going to be talking everything. Make sure you subscribe, hit the bell next to it. Drop a like on this video. And most importantly, guys, if you want to support this channel, the easiest way you can do so is go and get our 2021 fantasy football draft guide, get our rankings, get our tiers, get our dynasty rookie draft guide. I mean, hundreds of pages of information, and you're getting all of this. We're not selling it for $80. We're not selling it for $90. All I'm asking is we have the perfect partnership with Underdog Fantasy, where we live stream every single night, real money fantasy football drafts. And all you have to do is go to the description of the video, make a $10 deposit on Underdog Fantasy with promo code FLOCK, and you are going to get all of that. You're going to get to come out to a live stream, get in a draft with me, and you get $25 added to your account. So you're getting paid $25 to go out there and do some real money fantasy football drafts. And at the same time, you're getting to draft with me on the live stream, and all our rankings, our tiers, all our draft guides. Go and take advantage, and let's dive into it. Let's talk about our top 5 running back targets for the 2021 fantasy football playoffs. And let's start it off with Trey Sermon. I mean, talk about a player that by the time we get to the playoffs, Trey Sermon could already be classified as a league winner, because while yes, I know what we're going to have this upcoming season is we're going to have a bunch of haters who have listened to me all offseason talk about how much I love Trey Sermon in fantasy and how much I hate a Raheem Mostert. And they're going to go, Mason, it's week 3. Do you not see Raheem Mostert's the starting running back in San Francisco? You got this entirely wrong. And I can already tell you, I know exactly what's going to happen. We're going to have to deal with this question every single night we're live streaming. And I'm going to have to sit there and go, oh my God, guys, it's week 3. Trey Sermon is a rookie who was drafted in the 3rd round. The 49ers trade up to draft him in the 3rd round this past season. I mean, we know that while, yes, he may not be the starting running back, he may not be the lead running back in the committee at the very beginning of the season, you're not drafting him for then. What is so great about this Trey Sermon current draft price or trade price, whatever you're looking to acquire him with, is actually he is currently being valued as a running back 3. And I think if you look at his full fantasy football season, like you're looking at his entire points, I mean, most likely he'll probably finish in about that running back 3 range. But why you love Trey Sermon is during the beginning part of the year, where you don't necessarily have a hard time going out and finding production, because remember, in week 1, week 2, week 3, nobody is going to be healthier in terms of their overall fantasy football roster than at the beginning of the season. And at the same time, you don't have the bye weeks, so you're not looking for those running back depth pieces. So Trey Sermon, he's probably going to be on the bench for you regardless in the first half of the season. I mean, not the first entire half, but at least through the first 3 or 4 weeks. And we know you don't necessarily need to be finding elite level production then, but by the time we get to about the bye weeks coming in, by the time your team is probably getting hit with some injuries, that's going to be when Trey Sermon's taking over as the starting running back in San Francisco. He's going to continue to earn that role as the season goes on. We have seen this time and time again with these rookie running backs. I mean, we know that if you look at an Alvin Kamara back in 2017, this is very similar to what you had. You actually had the New Orleans Saints go out there and trade up to get Alvin Kamara in the 3rd round, just like we saw with the 49ers with Trey Sermon this year. And I'm not saying Trey Sermon's as good as a running back than Alvin Kamara. Of course, that's not the case. But we remember that in that season in 2017, Alvin Kamara, through the first month of the season, did very little. I mean, you couldn't start Alvin Kamara in fantasy. Probably not going to be able to start Trey Sermon either. But talk about a league-winning player in Alvin Kamara, in that in the back half of that season, he emerged as the starting running back for the New Orleans Saints, and he provided you elite fantasy production. I think that this overall offense, when Trey Lance takes over as the starter, is going to be one of the best offenses in the NFL, and I mean that wholeheartedly. And we know that this is going to be a team that is trying to run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. So when Lance takes over, when we're in the bye weeks, when we're in the fantasy football playoffs, you want the feature down running back for the San Francisco 49ers. And that's going to be Trey Lance. And if you look at what we're actually going to have as the playoff schedule for the San Francisco 49ers, it's hard to get better than this. They had the Falcons in the first week of the playoffs. And by the way, guys, our playoff schedule that we're going to be looking at are weeks 15, 16, and 17. Of course, up until this season, we played in playoffs that were weeks 14, 15, 16. But with the extra game added in, you're having to slide that back down. So we're going to be looking at weeks 15, 16, and 17 as the fantasy football playoffs. And here in week 15, you have the Atlanta Falcons for Trey Sermon, a team that historically has been very bad at giving up points to the running back position. You have the Tennessee Titans in week 16, and I will say it's a little bit of a worry going up against the Titans. I mean, of course, it's very hard to predict these matchups this far out in advance, but we can also look at it and say, well, maybe at this point we have the Tennessee Titans a little more up-tempo, given the fact that they get rid of Arthur Smith. They actually go out there and they bring in Julio Jones, so maybe it's a more up-tempo team, and we could see a potential shootout. And then the last week of the season, your championship week, this is why you want Trey Sermon, guys, because if you make it to the championship, they're going up against Houston. They're going to be going up against the Houston Texans. I would imagine that the point spread on this game should maybe be about 10 points. I mean, the 49ers are going to crush the Texans. It won't even be close. So you're actually getting Trey Sermon to go out there, go up against a Houston defense that is not good, a Houston offense that is horrendous. The 49ers should be leading the game 99% of the time. I mean, Trey Sermon's going to go out there and he's going to dominate. So just based on the fact that this is someone that in a great offense is going to continue to expand his role throughout the entire season, and he has a very nice schedule for the fantasy football playoffs, I do love Trey Sermon. And our next running back for the playoffs is going to be James Robinson. I think with the James Robinson here, we have to acknowledge a couple things. Okay, first off with James Robinson, you're not getting the same running back that you had last year. While yes, you're going to be expecting the efficiency to take a bump up from Robinson because he's going to be playing in a much better offense with Trevor Lawrence as the starting quarterback compared to what he had last year. We do have to acknowledge the fact that the volume's going to go down. They're not giving him every single touch in this backfield. It's going to be a new coaching staff. And while, yes, now that Travis Etienne is injured, I mean, James Robinson is going to be the dominant running back on this team. However, I mean, we have already seen that this offense is most likely going to be using, I don't want to say a running back by committee, but there's a big difference between what we saw with James Robinson last year and what we're going to get from him this year. I actually think that he's still the feature down back, but we can't acknowledge that it's not like he's going to get 95% of the snaps. It's probably going to dip down to about 70 to 80%, which is still normal for an NFL running back, and that's still at a great range. It's just not going to be the same as it was last year. But a big reason why we like to go out and try to target James Robinson is he's playing with Trevor Lawrence. We're not expecting Trevor Lawrence to be able to come in and starting off in week one, be a fantastic elite quarterback in the NFL. You're going to be expecting Trevor Lawrence to most likely be a quarterback that continues to progress, that continues to make this entire offense better as the season goes on. And a big thing about the Jags is I could be wrong with this assessment, and I will definitely say that Urban Meyer's giving me a little hesitancy to say this, but I think based on the division that they have this year, if we actually saw something where Carson Wentz missed a significant amount of time, which is not out of the realm of possibilities for Carson Wentz, we've already discussed this. I mean, the Jags could be a decent team in this division because they get 2 free gimme games against the Houston Texans. And if you actually have, just say, the Indianapolis Colts taking a significant step back from last year, I know that Carson Wentz most likely is not going to allow that to happen, but it's definitely in the range of outcomes. All of a sudden, the Jags could be the second best team in this division. And I'm not thinking that they're going to go out and compete for a playoff spot right away. But what I'm saying is, I'm saying that I think it's going to give hopes to the Jags fan base. And I think this is a team that's not going to be packing it in halfway through the year. I think this is a team that's going to be trying to win games every single week because this team has been very bad for a very long time now. I think that now they finally have that future hope with the Trevor Lawrence coming in. And what I'm going to expect is I'm going to expect this offense to be, I don't want to say league average by the time we get to the end of the year, but definitely significantly better than what you had. And if you look at the schedule here, guys, in week 15, the opening week for the fantasy football playoffs, they're getting the Houston Texans. I mean, you can imagine that, yes, the Jags may be not the best this upcoming season, but they're definitely going to crush the Texans. I mean, that in-division game is going to be a no-brainer. Then they also go up against the New York Jets. Now, I understand the Jets are also a very improved team from where they were last year, but I think just this Trevor Lawrence versus Zach Wilson matchup's probably going to be a big storyline, and I'd imagine that's going to be a highly focused in on game, and that both teams are really going out there and trying to show that they have the future quarterback. And I'd imagine that the Jags maybe come out on top in this contest, and it's going to be a close game regardless against a Jets defense that isn't near the top of the NFL. So I do like James Robinson in that contest. Now, the last week is against the New England Patriots. And yes, you have to be worried about the Patriots defense. You have to be worried about Bill Belichick, but at least 2 out of the 3 weeks here are going to be fantastic for what you're actually getting here with the James Robinson. So I think everything is in line for Robinson to have a pretty good stretch during the fantasy football playoffs. But let me know what y'all think, of course, down in the comment section. Now, our next running back going to be someone that I haven't been aggressively drafting, but I actually think that this is going to be a nice playoff stretch for him. It's going to be a Chris Carson. So we know a couple things here. I think that the Seattle Seahawks are going to be an offense. While yes, they're definitely hard to predict this upcoming season because they have Shane Waldron coming in, replacing Brian Schottenheimer. And I am wanting to go on record for this because I know the entire narrative around this situation is saying, oh, well, they fired Brian Schottenheimer for not being run heavy enough. We know Pete Carroll wants to run the ball. I don't know how true that is. I actually think they may bring in Shane Waldron and increase the pace of play, which we would love to see. If they can run more plays per game, it's going to be fantastic for everybody in the offense. But what we know with the Seahawks is this should be a team that's actually going out there and is competitive near the end of the season. Now, also at the same time, they're playing in a very tough division with the Rams, with the 49ers, and the Cardinals. So you actually have it where this team is 100% good enough to be a playoff team, but at the same time, they're going to be needing to win those games down the stretch in 2021. We have seen Chris Carson. Yes, you have to be slightly worried that if he can hold up throughout the entire season. But, I mean, you're seeing an in-division game against the Los Angeles Rams. We have seen that the Seattle Seahawks before maybe skew a little more run-heavy against the Rams, considering what Jalen Ramsey tends to do to DK Metcalf. You have the Chicago Bears as well. And I know, guys, you hear Chicago, and that makes you very worried of what's to come. But I promise you, the Chicago defense is not what it was 2 to 3 years ago. I mean, this is a defense that invested a ton of money for a great reason into Khalil Mack. And at the same time, I mean, I think that you actually have the Rams as heavy favorites in this matchup where they can go through and they can lean on the run. And most importantly, they are going to be able to go out there and just completely crush the Detroit Lions during the Fantasy Football Championship. So Chris Carson, not as exciting as the other names on this list, but I still think that he is a safe bet for the fantasy football playoffs. Now, our next team is going to be Javonte Wllliams. And here with Javonte Wllliams in the Denver Broncos, very similar to what you're going to have with Trey Sermon. I think that this is going to be an offense where I'm going to get a lot of comments by week 3, by week 4, going, Mason, you idiot. Mason, you told us wrong. Melvin Gordon's the running back that we want in Denver. And I'll say maybe the Melvin Gordon hype is warranted for the first month of the season. But by the time we get to the fantasy football playoffs, I mean, it's going to be the time to shine for Javonte Wllliams. It's going to be his backfield. I mean, we're going through looking at the matchups. He's going up against Cincinnati. Don't have to worry about Cincinnati being some fantastic team. What we're really worried about here with the Denver Broncos is just staying competitive enough in these games where they can go out there and they can continue to run the ball. That's the number one thing that I want to look from Denver in these matchups. I want to make sure that they can be in the game because we know Javonte Wllliams, just like we were talking about with the Trey Sermon, a running back that they trade up to select in the top 40 picks of this past year's NFL draft, projects to be a bell cow running back. I mean, he's going to be the starter. I promise you he'll be the starter over Melvin Gordon halfway through the season, and he'll obviously have that role when we get to the fantasy football playoffs. But the Denver offense is not that exciting despite them having fantastic talent at receiver. The quarterback situation is just horrendous. Now, they do have that first Cincinnati matchup. They should be able to stay competitive in that. They also have a matchup against the Las Vegas Raiders. And another perfect matchup for this team to stay competitive. Obviously, an in-division game. I think that you could actually see just the Denver Broncos flat out winning this game. And of course, you need those competitive games for your running backs. And now the last game that they're going to have during the fantasy football playoffs will be going up against the Los Angeles Chargers. And here against the Chargers, I'll say, not a great matchup. I mean, I don't love going up against this defense at the same time. I mean, we could imagine that the Chargers are going to be heavy favorites in that game, which is not ideal for Javonte Wllliams. But at least 2 out of the 3 weeks, I think Javonte is going to be a smash here. And at the same time, he's someone that while he may not necessarily be a running back 2 to start the season, I think he could finish as a high-end running back 2 during those fantasy football weeks. So if you're playing him at your flex, then it's going to be a fantastic option. And now our next running back, let's go and let's give out Antonio Gibson. And one thing that I'm worried about, guys, and I'll be 100% willing to admit this. Y'all know that I have been more so fading Terry McLaurin. I've been screaming that Keenan Allen, Allen Robinson are significantly better options. We've been screaming that CeeDee Lamb is someone you want over Terry McLaurin. So I've been getting Terry McLaurin in very few fantasy drafts. I have something to be worried about, and that is this matchup for the Washington football team in weeks 15, 16, and 17. Guys, they get to play the Philadelphia Eagles in 2 out of the 3 weeks here, and they also get to go up against the Dallas Cowboys. So with those games, I'd imagine with the elite defense Washington should have, it's not going to be a great situation for those opposing teams. I mean, I would imagine that Antonio Gibson comes out, and at this point as well, guys, he is going to be so far developed his track as a running back. We have to remember he came out as a receiver. So hopefully he does have his pass protection down, where J.D. McKissic is a name that we don't have to hear that often. So maybe he continues to expand his passing game role as we go through the season. Maybe he finally turns into the David Johnson that we want him to be in the back half of the season, and with a fantastic fantasy schedule in the last 3 weeks of the year. I think that Antonio Gibson's a very solid selection. Now, let's give out an honorable mention, because I will say that I like the schedule. I like the running back, but we have to be worried about the team being so bad. Maybe they just pack it in by the time we actually get to the playoffs, and that's going to be the New York Giants with Saquon Barkley. So Barkley, I mean, going up against Dallas, Philadelphia, Chicago, I mean, I actually would really like this stretch for Saquon Barkley. However, the main problem is, just like I already said, I mean, Daniel Jones in this offense, they do not project to see that many wins. And obviously, Saquon Barkley has not signed his contract extension so far. So my one worry, y'all know I love Saquon Barkley. I've been higher on Saquon Barkley than anybody else this entire season. My one worry is, what happens if Saquon Barkley suffers a minor injury in about week 14, week 15, and then he only has 3 or 4 weeks left on the season? They're just shutting him down. Very similar to what you have with Joe Mixon last year on a very bad offense. Whenever he suffers that injury, there's no reason to bring him back. I'm kind of worried about that happening with Saquon Barkley, so we're not going to put him in our top 5 guys here. I just want to give him an honorable mention, but there's that giant asterisk next to it. Now, thank you, my dudes. I really hope that y'all enjoyed this video. Please leave a comment letting me know your thoughts, as well as if you would like another video like this for the receiver position. And also drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and use promo code FLOCK on Underdog Fantasy if you want our 2021 rankings, if you want our tiers, if you want our draft guides, if you want $25 added to your account. And yeah, that's all I got for you, my dudes, and have a great day. Thank you to everybody supporting the show on Patreon. We got some new members in MCGC, Brian, Matthew, Craig, Ian, Woody, Colt, Marcus, Jack, and Nicholas. Thank you, my dudes.